we don't operate in silos. Like all of our parts are interconnected. We aren't just well when work is well, like we have relationships and, our financial wellness and all of these different puzzle pieces kind of go together. So, what a functional medicine health coach does when it comes to dealing with a person who is suffering from chronic stress and burnout is to really take a holistic view of what's going on and look at all of the different pieces of the puzzle. So there's many areas of our life that can be contributing to the way that we're feeling and how to get better.
A few years ago, I started writing a fictitious story based on my time as an educator. It is called Taught, and the story was partially inspired out of anger and frustration fueled by burnout. Okay, actually it was more than partially inspired by anger and frustration. But Taught has also become a vehicle for me to tell what I thought at the time, and in some ways continue to think, was and is the real story of teaching. I now realize that my perspective is not everyone's perspective, but there are some pieces of Taught that resonated with many educators. This podcast is an extension of that story, and I, a former teacher, will interview other educators asking them to share how they really feel about the current state of education. Why are so many teachers burn out? Why are so many, like me, leaving the field? We likely won't solve any problems or come up with any solutions, but we can create a community of voices that maybe begin the conversation around how educators can take back teaching. I'm Melissa LaFleur. Welcome to Taught, the podcast. Hey everybody, guess who's back? It's Amy Schamberg. If you missed Amy's episode from last month, I linked it in today's show notes. Last month, Amy and I discussed how chronic stress and burnout are defined from a professional standpoint, because Amy is a professional. And she's devoted a lot of time, energy, and education into the field of burnout, especially in the area of education. Amy earned her graduate degree in school psychology from the University of Colorado and worked as a school psychologist in the Denver metro area for over a decade. Now, as a certified functional medicine health coach, Amy continues to work in wellness, consultancy roles within educational programs throughout Colorado. She specializes in mental health, burnout recovery, and holistic well-being, and she's doing a side gig with me right now, trying to put knowledge and resources out to all of us. Amy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here again.
On our last episode together, you broke down the chronic stress and burnout connection and gave us some understanding of what chronic stress and burnout actually are. Can you do just a quick recap of that for our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. So, chronic stress is something that we experience for a prolonged period of time. So, it's something that we've been experiencing for a couple of weeks. And some of those symptoms of chronic stress might be aches and pains that weren't there before, that aren't due to an injury, insomnia, or feeling really sleepy all the time, having low energy, noticing a change in appetite, irritability, cloudy thinking, big reactions to small problems, emotional withdrawal, social isolation. And like I said, these are things that you would be experiencing over a period of time. So it's not abnormal to have, one or two of these symptoms for a short period of time or intermittently. But when you're noticing that it's ongoing, that's when you can be sure that it's chronic stress. And chronic stress becomes burnout when it just feels like things are never going to get better. Every day feels like a bad day. You feel like no matter what you do, you can never get ahead. You start to feel this sense of detachment or disconnection from your life or your work. You have trouble telling one day from the next. You have the cynicism that doesn't really go away, and it's hard to find the humor in situations. You might have difficulty concentrating. You might notice that because you feel like you have this lack of self-efficacy, that you can never get ahead. So you stop trying and perhaps your performance is dropping. And it's just kind of this sense that you're just kind of stuck and things aren't going to get better. So why should I even try to make them better?
I love that definition. I would like to say I think that cynicism was my humor language for quite a while. So, and only the other
Many of us.
people who were burnout thought I was funny. But okay. So, in addition to chronic stress and burnout and the work that you've done there, you are also a certified functional medicine health coach.
Mhm.
And my goal here today is to have you tell us a little bit about what that is and kind of the connection between the two.
Sure.
Because I'm really interested in, well, I'm interested for myself and I'm also interested for our listeners in that I think that if chronic stress and burnout are connected, I also think our physical bodies and our health are very connected to those two things as well. So
Absolutely.
tell us a little bit about what a functional medicine health coach does.
hmm Yes, and I started to kind of allude to it last time. Functional medicine is so important. So, Western medicine or conventional medicine is also important. We need emergency care and we need surgical expertise and we need, infectious disease control. But functional medicine aims to be proactive and preventative, whereas, typical approaches to healthcare are more reactionary. It's like, giving the pills, whereas functional medicine is, well, let's figure out why this is happening. And so much of our modern day disease can be addressed through modifiable lifestyle factors. So things like exercise and diet and ding, 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 stress. So stress has so many implications on our health. And there's so much research that shows if we can manage our stress levels better, we have lower cholesterol, we have lower blood pressure, we have a lower risk of heart disease, of diabetes, of all of these things that you might think are unrelated. It's crazy. But truly, they're all connected. And that's what I really love about functional medicine. Honestly, I feel that it's very empowering, because so many times we get sick or we get told that we have this ailment or, we get a diagnosis slapped on us. Oh, you have anxiety. And we're like, oh, well, I am this thing now. Whereas with a functional medicine approach, you can really learn to make some shifts in your life, and see it the reversal of symptoms, or the decline of the severity of symptoms. And really, I see that to be so empowering. It was empowering for myself. And so, that's kind of like the medical lens. But when I apply that to what it's like to be burnt out, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, we don't operate in silos. Like all of our parts are interconnected. We aren't just well when work is well, like we have relationships and, our financial wellness and all of these different puzzle pieces kind of go together. So, what a functional medicine health coach does when it comes to dealing with a person who is suffering from chronic stress and burnout is to really take a holistic view of what's going on and look at all of the different pieces of the puzzle. So there's many areas of our life that can be contributing to the way that we're feeling, and how to get better.
I'm really
Um,
glad that you have brought this up. Actually, you've said a couple of things, and I'm going to bring up something that you said um, in the podcast that we did before, which is you didn't say it exactly this way, but we oftentimes have this feeling that we just need to push through.
mhm,
And I definitely resemble that pushing through philosophy. It's I feel this ache or pain. I have these chronic headaches, but I'm just going to push through. I haven't slept for 5 days, but I'm going to push through and I'm going to go to work anyway. Um, and I think that I did some work once I got here to Portugal online with a lady in Brazil. Her name is Aline. She's amazing. And she basically just does a series of it's yoga and Pilates and fascia work. And let me be clear, I don't speak Portuguese well. She doesn't speak English, but we make these classes work. And the one thing that she says to me every week is observe what's going on with your body. And two things have come, a lot has come for me. I have had many benefits from working with Alini, but two of the things that I noticed that I was surprised about, one was I do not notice my body.
Mm,
I was completely a year ago out of tune with everything going on with my body. Additionally, I rarely touch my own body because we have to
mm,
do a series of self massage. And
mhm.
it was so interesting to me that
Yeah,
I'm so disconnected from my
yeah,
physical being.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's really interesting and so true. I think about when I was in schools and I would go into elementary school classrooms and I would teach kiddos about emotion recognition. And the first part of that is where do you feel it in your body? So if it's anger, right? It's like, oh, are your palms or your fists clenched, right? Is your heart beating fast? Or if it's worry, do you feel that in your belly or, is it in your head? And we do that with small children, but we don't often pay attention to those signals for ourselves.
Well, and when you talked about chronic stress in our former podcast, the first things that you brought, the number one thing that you said was aches and pains in your
Yep.
body. And there's a body of research out there that talks about how and you just alluded to this, how chronic stress and burnout can manifest in illness and injury.
Yeah.
Um, can you break down for us
Yeah.
some examples of that? And
Mhm.
then what approaches does functional medicine tell us that we can use to be preventative?
Sure. So, I always say that there are these invisible effects or impacts of chronic stress, and that's the psychological stuff, the cognitive and the emotional. And then there are the physical effects that are more observable typically, but they can also be hidden. So, I'll start with the physical effects that are observable. So that's that fatigue, the headaches, the migraines, the insomnia, muscle pain, joint pain, GI issues, right? And then the hidden ones, the hidden effects that aren't noticeable unless you actually were tested in your doctor's office. So, like I said, high cholesterol or type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, um, you know, cardiovascular disease, stroke, heart attack, all of these things, are often linked to stress. And then the psychological effects, the cognitive impact could show up as difficulty making decisions, having a short attention span, feeling a lack of motivation. And then the emotional impacts include depressive symptoms, chronic anxiety, feeling hopeless or helpless, or that cynical outlook that we talked about. So there's all of these different, covert, overt, invisible, visible um, effects of chronic stress. And when you work with a functional medicine practitioner, they're typically quite skilled at gathering a comprehensive history and putting these puzzle pieces together. So it's like, okay, well, when did this start happening and what was going on in your life? And, you can kind of start to paint the picture of what's going on. And then to be more proactive, to be more preventative about, putting some things into place when you are experiencing chronic stress so that it doesn't become burnout or so that it doesn't lead to something awful like a heart attack or a stroke. Um, Really, it's these modifiable lifestyle factors, such as taking good care of yourself. Are you drinking enough water? How many of us go through the day without drinking enough water because we don't have time to go to the bathroom, right? Like simple things like that, right? Drinking enough water, um, having healthy meals. And I know everybody's busy and stressed, and who has time? So we're just going to go through the drive-through, but when we do that day in and day out, it adds up. So making these simple shifts to eat better. Social time is so important. There have been so many studies. I read a study recently that said the positive effects of having a best friend at work and or having a very strong social group. So, your social life is supportive and nourishing. Those positive effects were just as strong and significant as the negative effects of tobacco smoke from smoking cigarettes.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That is unbelievable.
I know it. I should send it. I'll send it to you. It was like mind blowing. Um, but so like when we're super stressed, we start to isolate, right? Our friends say, "Hey, do you want to hang out this weekend?" And we say, "No, I've got so much to do," or "Oh, I'm so exhausted." And that could be problematic. So it's a protective factor to continuously like do the things that bring us joy, including be with our tribe, the people who build us up. And then actively engaging in stress reduction activities. And whether that is acupuncture or yoga or a long walk on the beach or reading a book or taking a nap or allowing yourself to not clean the house this weekend, like it looks different for everybody, but we have to be intentional. We have to make time for it. We have to put it on our calendar, just like we put everything else.
I 100% agree with that. And I love that you said, it looks different for everyone because I shared in the last episode, I
Mhm.
I am in recovery still from burnout, and I am still noticing my patterns that kind of got me to burnout to begin with. And oftentimes I will choose something that, to be honest with you, is quite stressful for me, but somebody else feels like it helps you de-stress,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have the same effect on me.
Hmm.
So I'm learning, relearning, I suppose, because
Hmm.
I do think this is a journey for
Hmm.
anybody out there listening. Um, I'm at year 2 of my journey. So if you are an educator, or it doesn't matter if you're an educator. If you're burnout, it truly is a journey. And Amy mentioned on the last episode that it takes time and it takes reflection. And I kind of am feeling like it's not a process that you can speed up or slow down. It's just a process that you have to endure and
Yeah.
stick with. And it's so worth it in the end. But part of my process has definitely been realizing that I'm not 100% sure all the time what de-stresses me. So when I find something, I definitely put it in the vault and I go
Mhm.
back to it time and time again. So at least I have that one resource to reflect back on.
Yeah, and it might change, right, from season to season or, week to week, and that's fine. And along those lines of stress reduction is that topic of self-care. And, self-care exist on a spectrum. Self-care doesn't have to be going to the spa, it doesn't have to be going to get your nails done. Self-care can be listening to your favorite song or taking 6 slow, deep breaths or just pausing to look out the window and appreciating the sunny day. Like these little micro moments that just spark a little bit of positivity within us or a little bit of relaxation have a cumulative effect if we can continuously do those sorts of things as frequently as possible.
Yeah, I think that positivity was very hard for me to come by for a long time. I'm back there. I can be
Hmm.
positive again,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it's almost like all the other things that we've talked about. It becomes a practice, um,
Hmm.
and I had to go back, find
Hmm.
ways to be positive again, and then practice those things.
Hmm. And it's almost just telling yourself like it's like when we go to the gym, right? Like I personally don't enjoy going to the gym for like the first month, but I force myself to do it because I know that I will like I've done it enough, right? I know that after like the first month I'll actually start to like it and I'll want to go and it'll be like my escape. But man, those first couple weeks, they're not fun. So you just kind of push yourself through it. Um, because you know it's good for you. And I think it's the same thing with like allowing yourself to rest or allowing yourself to experience gratitude or appreciation or positivity or anything else that's kind of counter to the cynical burnout that we're in. Um, it's just kind of like, even if part of your brain doesn't believe that practicing gratitude is going to be beneficial, just allowing yourself to go with it and try it out for a while and see what happens.
Yep. And the cynic in me is like, she's already gone to crazy town now. She's talking about going to the gym. But you are correct. You are correct. I like my Pilates class that I go to, mainly because I make fun of the trainers. But still, whatever does it for you, right? Whatever gives you that
Exactly.
positivity. And
Exactly.
exercise does really, it keeps me out of the depths of depression, whether I want to do it or not. So that's another
Mhm.
great one to mention. Okay. So as we begin to close this conversation for today, what are some tips you can leave us with to create healthier, calmer bodies? If you had 3 tips that you could give us this
Ooh,
week that we can start. Yeah.
3 tips for a
Or more
healthier.
if you want.
Three tips for a healthier. Yeah, well, I'm trying to like narrow it down because I've got like 800 in my mind right now. Okay, the first one has got to be sleep. I think that nothing good comes from having a poor night of sleep, right? Our relationships, our decisions, all the things. So if you can find a way to prioritize getting a good night of sleep, that would be huge. And I understand that some people have things going on in life. Maybe you have a new baby and you can't get a solid 8 hours. How can you invite in some time, some moments of rest throughout the day? In order to have a calm body, we have to have a nourished body that is, not sleep deprived. I would
Absolutely.
also, yeah, right. And so, along those same lines, creating time and space to do something where you're just kind of like you're a human being, not a human doing. Are you sitting down and reading a book that you enjoy for 20 minutes? I would, encourage you to do something that doesn't involve a screen. Um, so many times we kind of get lost down those social media rabbit holes, and maybe it's relaxing, but maybe it's not. So
Oftentimes not. Yes.
maybe turning on a Netflix show that you enjoy. Can you watch like, a program that you haven't seen in a while or something that you've been meaning to get to? Or just go sit outside. So much research shows that, just being out in nature can be so therapeutic. Take a nap outside, even better. Get some sunshine, get some rest. But in order to have a calm body, we really need to create an opportunity for our bodies to calm down, for our nervous system to regulate, to allow that high cortisol and high adrenaline that we've been, coasting on to kind of come back down to baseline.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with all 3 of those. For myself, I can't speak for the rest of you out there listening, but for me, if I don't get a good night's sleep, she mentioned relationships. My relationship suffers immensely because my husband is pretty much like, ooh, okay, maybe you need to go take a nap. And he's right. I do. So I am very
Yeah, when he
crabby.
tells you, it's like, no, I don't. I'm fine,
That's
right?
right. I'm not going to, hopefully, he won't listen to this episode. I don't want to tell him he's right. And the other one that you mentioned that really hit home with me was the nature one. I
Mhm.
am constantly amazed, consistently amazed at how I can get messing around with the podcast. A whole day can go by. I can be inside all day and I
Mhm.
just feel whatever this is, like this weight on me.
Yes.
And as soon as I step out the door and I hear the birds and I feel the breeze and I hear, somebody's dog comes over and needs me to pet it, and there's grass around me and trees and the leaves rustling, it really puts me in a different headspace. Um, so thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. And also, just to be clear, nature doesn't necessarily mean like going to a park, right? Like what you just said, step outside, just get
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, just getting that sunshine.
Mhm.
Amy, thank you so much once again for being here. And for everybody listening, if you like this conversation, but you're wanting more, Amy will be providing an online professional group therapy session on Sunday, August 11th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 6 p.m. Portugal Time. For 20 US dollars, you can get an hour with an experienced professional and avoid the forms, insurance, and all that other minutia that can keep many of us, and when I say us, I am definitely putting me in here, from seeking out professional guidance. There's no commitment to do more than that. You can find the link to the first session and the subsequent sessions at Amy's website, amyschamberg.com, my website, tot.buzzsprout.com, in today's show notes, on Instagram at Amy Schamberg or at Taught the Podcast, and finally on my Facebook page, Taught by a Teacher. So if you're feeling the burn of burnout and would like some professional guidance on coping strategies, a safe space to speak your truth, or just to see if guidance from a professional might be a good step for you, visit the link at any of the locations and sign up. Space for each workshop is limited, so sign up soon. I wish I knew. Today's episode was produced and edited by me. The theme music is by Otis McDonald featuring Joni Inez. If you know someone who might enjoy these conversations, please share the podcast episodes as much and as often as you can. It's as simple as copying the link you use to access today's episode and sending it in a message or sharing it on social media. I'm a small, independent operation, and your shares broaden our audience. Perhaps you or someone you know will be inspired to talk about teacher burnout. If you would like to get your voice on my podcast, contact me via the link on my webpage, tot.buzzsprout.com. Coach, speaker, and author Rashid Ogunlaro said, "It may take many voices for people to hear the same message." Join me in being one of the many voices rising up to get the message out around educator burnout. This is Melissa LaFleur. Thank you for listening to Taught, the podcast. I wish I knew. I have an important reminder/disclaimer to share. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. Content provided on this podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. We encourage you to do your own research and consult with qualified professionals before making any decisions based on the information discussed in this or any other episode. Additionally, any opinions or statements made during the podcast are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you for tuning in.